Hi everyone, this is David here from Write On Resources, and this video is going to take a look at Romeo and Juliet. Now this is a free sample video. It's going to be ideal for anyone that's going to be revising key elements of the play. So it doesn't matter whether you're in year 10, year 11, or even if you're a trainee teacher looking to just get a good idea of some of the key elements of the play. This video will really work well for you. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at some of the key events that happen at the beginning of the play. What I'd like you to do is you see each of the events. I'd like you to think carefully about each one. I'd like to try and put them in chronological order. Now what we mean when we say chronological order, we mean the order in which they occur naturally in the play. So in terms of what happens first, second, third, so on and so forth. So the first event that we're going to focus on is this. Romeo is lovesick for Rosalind. Romeo and Juliet start planning the wedding. Romeo and Juliet get married. Despite being from rival families, Romeo and Juliet swear their love for each other. The Montagues gate crash. Romeo and Juliet meet for the first time. And the final one, there is a street fight. The Montagues versus the Capulets. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like to pause this video, take your time, think about the events that are there on the screen, and just think which ones happened first, and then what preceded each event. This is a really important thing to have in your mind, really important when you come and approach the exam questions as well, because you really need to know the play in and out before you get ready to actually take your GCSE exams. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones in the table below. So as we look through the answers now, you'll see we've got two different columns. We've got the events in the play, and we've got the act and the scene in which they occur. These are going to be very important when you apply your understanding to the exam question, and it might be that your exam question asks you to focus on one extract that's faced in front of you, but also demonstrate other instances where characters or events play a key role within your understanding of the play. So knowing when these events occur are very important as well. So first one, Romeo is lovesick for Rosaline. That's in Act 1. The second one, there is a street fight, the Montagues versus the Capulets. That's in Act 1, Scene 1. The third one, the Montagues gate crash the Capulets party. Romeo and Juliet meet for the first time, and again that's in Act 1. The next one, despite being from rival families, Romeo and Juliet swear their love for each other. That's in Act 2. Romeo and Juliet start planning their wedding. Again, that's in Act 2. And the final one, Romeo and Juliet get married, which is the final thing we're thinking about at the moment for Act 2. It's really important that you go through these key events and that you know when they occur in the play. Obviously, we're just looking at the first initial events that you should all know by now, hopefully. And now we're going to move on and look at something a little bit more complex. Look at the contextual information and attempt the challenges that follow. So if you're not too sure what we mean when we refer to contextual information, whenever we say context, it is on about the historical, social, political, even the religious factors that will play a role in the actual story or the play that you're studying in English. So in terms of Romeo and Juliet, we're going to focus on the theme of honour. Now this is a really important, very integral theme within the play, and it's important to know why this was such a big and important thing during the time that the play was written. So honour is kind of tied in with this idea of masculinity, right? That's an integral theme within the play, and it often controls the way that the male characters behave and interact to each other, and also the way that they interact towards the female characters as well. Honour may be blamed for much of the death and destruction caused in the play. It's the motivating force that causes many of the characters to die. This is particularly relevant in Act 1, where the servants begin fighting when the Capulet servant makes an offensive gesture. So an important thing to think about when we're thinking about the context is, do you know this information already? Is it something that you maybe have forgotten or weren't already aware of? If that is the case, you should attempt the challenge there at the top and make a note of any information that you weren't already aware of. If you can try and stretch yourself there, go for the super challenge and think, why was honour so important during this period? Think about how we'd interpret that compared to these days. It's not really something that people go on about in the kind of modern days. So why was it so important back in the time that the play was written? And then the mega challenge, if you can really stretch yourself and really challenge yourself, Try and recall a moment from the play where honour has an impact on the story. Look at the extract below and attempt the challenges that follow. So the extract that we're looking at now, this actually comes from a AQA past paper for the play Romeo and Juliet, obviously. So we're going to look through it. It's just a very small portion of it. We're taking our time with it. We're not going to look at the whole thing in one go. What I'd like you to do is to read through it. Think, who is the prince? What kind of character is he? Try and stretch yourself for the super challenge. So what's happened at this point in the play? And the last one, annotate the extract to demonstrate your understanding of what the character is trying to say. So, Prince says, rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, purveyors of the night-stained steel, will they not hear? What ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture, from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground, and hear the sentence of your moved prince. This can be quite difficult to understand, especially when you're faced with a few words that you might not be particularly familiar with. This is going to be difficult for anyone that is studying Shakespeare and if you have English as a second language. However, a good thing to do is to go through it and identify some of the main words that you do recognise. It's kind of like studying poetry in that way, where you kind of need to make an educated guess based on what you can understand. So what I'd like you to do is just pause the video, try to work through as many of the challenges as you can. They do get steadily harder, and on the next slide we're going to start going through the extracts in a bit more detail and talk about the most important points. Look at the annotations below to help consolidate your understanding. Now the first bit I'd like to draw to your attention is this first line here, where Prince says rebellious subjects. So what he means when he says this, he's referring to the servants, the people who are engaging in this street fight, as people who are acting out against their leader. This is not something that he would want to be seeing actually happen, because it makes them look very dishonourable because of the way that they're carrying out their actions. The next bit is profaners of this neighbour's stained steel. What we mean by that, you are people who turn against your neighbours, use your weapons against them, and this is something that he doesn't think they should be doing, right? You shouldn't be harming your neighbour. Will they not hear? Very simply, they're not listening to him. They're in the heat of a fight, right? Their rage, their passion is going to be out of control at this point, so they're not really listening to him at the moment. Then he goes on, he gets a little bit more enraged, Prince does. He says, what ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. So you are men that are satisfying your anger by hurting others, right? What kind of lowly, disrespectful kind of men would do such a thing? When it's talking about the purple fountains issuing from their veins, it means you're spilling blood. You're causing harm and pain to other people. When he realises he's not quite getting the message through, he goes a little bit further. So he says, on pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground. So, I'll have you tortured if you don't put down your swords. This really emphasises how Prince is feeling during this part of the play. He doesn't condone the actions, and he's really getting very angry and furious that this fighting is allowed to continue. And the last part, and hear the sentence of your moved prince. So put down your weapons and listen to your prince. If you'd like to pause the video here, spend a bit more time going through it, you're more than welcome to do so. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to think about this question at the top of the page there. So this is going to be the main focus. So from the extract, now that we've broken it down and seen what it's kind of all about, we're going to try and have a think about that question. So explain the extent to which you think Shakespeare presents the prince as a strong leader. So what I would do is I'd have a look through, go back over the extract again and try to identify 2 or 3 quotations that you could use just to get a little bit of practice to help respond to that question. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the actual exam question in a bit more depth. Okay, so this is a typical exam question that you're going to get. This is from an AQA paper that's a few years old now, but we do tend to use the same extracts over and over again. So it says, starting with this speech, explain the extent to which you think Shakespeare presents the prince as a strong leader. A really good thing about the exam is that they actually give you a little bit of guidance about what to include. So you can write about how Shakespeare presents the prince in this extract and how Shakespeare presents the prince in the play as a whole. Now, an important thing to notice with this one is with this first bullet point, it's saying use the extract that's provided. It's actually a little bit longer than the one we just looked at. Again, that can be found quite easily online. To get a higher mark though, you need to think about the prince in the play as a whole, and this is going to show your understanding of the play. Know that you've really put in the time and the effort to revise the key elements in the play. So this last bullet point there is really important if you're thinking about getting anywhere between like a 5 or a 6 in your exam. So the challenges we're going to look for, first one, I'd like to think, how confident would you feel responding to this question? Do you feel like you could attempt it now, or is it something you need to spend a bit more time on, go back and revise prints maybe in a little bit more detail? The next one, the super challenge, think about what are the parts or scenes of the play you could speak about. Again, this is where having a really good in-depth understanding of the play as a whole is really going to help you out in the exam. We don't necessarily know what character or what theme you're going to have to talk about, but just knowing as much of the play as possible is going to put you in the best position for the exam. And the last one, we're going to have a look at student response on the next slide, and I want you to assess their attempt at the question. Okay, so there are going to be some good points and some bad points about the response. I just want you to apply your knowledge, the things that you normally do in your class, to see whether you think it's a good response or if there's any way that it might be improved. Look at the student response below and attempt the challenges that follow. Again, we've got that same exact exam question that we had on the previous slide, so we should always have this in mind when we're evaluating the student response. And here it is. So this is a real student, it's not something that I've wrote myself, it's genuinely a response that we received a few years ago. I'm going to read through the passage now. If you'd like to pause it and go through it yourself, you're more than welcome to do so. As you're doing that, I'd like you to try and identify any positive and negative aspects about the example. Try and stretch yourself and consider what kind of grade or mark would you expect this student to achieve, and then try to justify your answer. So in doing that, in justifying your answer, it allows us to really think critically what works well, what can we improve, and what can you really apply when you come to write your own response. And then the mega challenge, use this response as the starting point to write your own paragraph in response to the exam question, which again is at the top of the slide there in the blue box. So the student has said, Shakespeare has presented the prince as a strong, powerful character through the way he interacts with his subjects. Now, a lot of students struggle with how to actually start their response, and a real easy thing to do is just to make sure that you use a part of the question in your response. That way, you're telling the examiner that you know what you need to focus on, and it also stops you from having that panicky moment of thinking, oh God, what do I include? What do I include? So as long as you include a part of the actual question, it keeps you on track and it allows the examiner to know that you know what you're talking about as well. So carrying on then. This may be seen in the quote, on pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground. The adverb torture conveys the gravity of the situation. Despite the fact that the men are standing up for their honour, the prince threatens the men to abandon their fighting and listen to his commands. This shows him to be kind of a powerful leader. Now, when we actually look at this, there are a few things that do work well. For example, it is quite a good quotation that has been used, but think about some of the language that's been used. So for example, something that caught my eye as I looked through it is some of the way that the student is presenting his ideas. Some of these words sound very uncertain. For example, this may be seen in the quote. That doesn't sound like this person's very confident. It doesn't sound like they're very sure about what they're trying to say. Again, at the end here as well, this shows him to be kind of a powerful leader. What does that mean? How can you be kind of a powerful leader? You're either a powerful leader or you're not. Again, using this kind of language makes it seem a little bit juvenile, a little bit like the person is a bit unsure of themselves. Another thing that they're doing is that they're trying to analyse the language. Now, it's really good that they're doing that. That's a good habit to get into with English in general. It's not necessarily something you have to do all the time when you're analysing Shakespeare, but it has made one crucial mistake, and that's in this one here. So the person has tried to zoom in or talk about the connotations or the key association that they have with a certain word, And they've said here the adverb torture. The unfortunate thing about this is though, even though the learner's trying to zoom in and trying to add a bit more intelligence to his response, torture in this case is not actually an adverb, it would be a verb. So just be consciously aware of that if you are trying to make your writing sound a little bit more sophisticated, trying to work in a few elements of language analysis, that is fine, but make sure you're 100% confident about things like word class and things like that. If you need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, we have a partner channel called Bookworm Teaching that have some fantastic videos as well. If you would like some more lessons on Romeo and Juliet, then please do check out our test page. The link will be provided below this one, and you'll be able to find the full lesson that we've just went through today, and also a follow-up lesson that builds on some of the knowledge that we went through today. If you do need anything, guys, please feel free to like and subscribe, leave us a comment, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Best of luck, guys, and please let me know if there's anything we can do to help you.